Hey, this is Mark Goldberg with another mobile episode of Mark Vlogs Watches. And once again, I am parked in the parking lot of, I don't know if you'll be able to see it through the window there. But anyway, I'm in a parking lot at a Dunkin' Donuts coffee. If you saw yesterday's episode, you'll know it's because I am exiled from home. I'm literally, look at that lump. I don't have cancer. This is, thank God, this is not lymphoma. This is a swollen salivary gland, which drains very slowly, and I've been literally told by the doctor to suck lemons, but I think it might be time to have her figure out how to drain that better. Archie's got the horns, Mark's got the lump. If you're a Howard Stern listener, then you know that Jeff the Drunk has a lump somewhere on him, and the lump occasionally calls in. My lump is not that talented. Okay. Anyway, I'm exiled from home. I'm sitting in the car, enjoying a delicious Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I don't know why they call this America Runs on Dunkin'. Quite frankly, I would really rather make coffee at home. If you ever watched my video on how to afford a Rolex, you know that you can eliminate this stuff and, just put the money into a Rolex fund. But you got to be careful, by the way, when you're saving for a Rolex. Do not commingle funds. Hello, Richard Stevens. You people can talk to me. We're going to have a Q&A session a little bit later, but I have an agenda here. Somebody says, Jason says, my buddy is a Dunkin'. It isn't. Fuck Dunkin'. You know what? This stuff is kind of watery. They put too much cream and sugar in it. I got to tell them, back that stuff down. But anyway, if you go back, you'll find a video that I wrote on how to afford a Rolex. And in it, I talked about, eliminating frills like this so that you can buy a Rolex. But I also made a point that I would like to reiterate here, and that is when you're saving for a Rolex, I'm not asking for handouts, Jason. Sit tight. Just calm down. I'm sitting here in a Porsche drinking a $2 coffee. Relax. You people, I may have to start ignoring you if you throw these meaningless non sequiturs at me when I'm I have a very hard time staying on track. I don't know if you ever, yes, okay. I don't know who my buddy, they're talking to me. You people out there, I don't know if you can see the comments, but somebody that disappeared said, you like me, Jason? Well, that's very kind, thank you, but I'm taken. So, but I'll put you into the lineup in the off chance that I wind up single anytime soon. Okay, hang on. It's going to take me a minute. Oh, so I don't want you to, catch on quick. Jason and Mark Allen says I'm awesome. Thank you. All of you are just, much too kind. So when you're saving for a watch, those of you who have female partners, which is, probably the majority of you bastards, I want to tell you it's very important that you do not commingle your funds. Do not commingle your funds with your women folk, all right? This is very important. What you really ought to be doing is you should be saving the watch money in a pickle jar someplace, for your guns, pocket knives and stuff. Because if you put it in her tampon drawer, that money is going to get put into curtains or, new paint. Or she's going to put it into tea towels. Your Rolex fund could literally go into tampons and tea towels if you're not careful. So I urge you not to commingle funds. What you really need to do when you're saving for, a high value Swiss watch is you need to squirrel it away someplace. You need to put your money someplace where your woman is not going to find it. Okay. So the title of this video is called Breitling sells out. What the fuck? And I was alerted this morning. Now, mind you, I read the watch press. There's an app. I don't know if you guys know this app. Probably you do, but if you don't, there's an app. There's an app. And the app that I want to talk about is called Watchville. Now, I have the iPhone. For those of you who insist on using an Android tin can on a string, I can't imagine why you would, but if you do, I don't know if they make this app for that. Somebody let me know in the comments here. But Watchville is a very good app for the iPhone. It sort of has the nuclear time, so it's got an app where it shows the seconds and date and moon phase and all that, so you can use it to, hack your watch and set it, accurately. And you can also use it to sort of informally time your watch over the next couple days to see if it's gaining or losing time. And it's got articles and sales stuff. I mean, it's a very cool app, Watchville. And it linked to an article from Hodinkee about the sale of Breitling. The corporation Breitling has sold. And actually, the first place that I became aware of that this morning was on MDWE, Modern Day Watch Enthusiasts. Shout out to my tribe of cannibals over at MDWE. Where Don, Time with Don's Time, has put up a link, to this Hodinkee article, which Hodinkee got it off of Bloomberg, which is a financial reporting agency, and it talked about the sale of Breitling. And so first the facts. Breitling speaking of quick wristwatch check. Speaking of quick and speaking of Breitlings, I don't know how to turn this. You remind me, Crow's Nest 3000. You remind me of my great-grandpa. He wore a shitter too. Hey, fuck you. I have a half a dozen Rolex in the bank box. You know what? We're going to talk about Breitling today. So don't get me started about my Breitling being a shitter. Eat me. We're going to come back to this. But first, Don Haynes. So Donnie Haynes, wristwatch check, and Oris. So Richard, you have no problem admitting your shitter collection. That's fine. Actually, there's a couple Orises I like. I owned one for 24 hours and returned it. Okay. So what's the deal with Breitling, and, why am I referencing Don Haynes? So Donnie, who is a good guy. I mean, you know what? I got to say, there's a whole spectrum of assholes from lovable asshole all the way up to fucking asshole. And Don Haynes is a lovable asshole. I'm myself somewhere more in the middle, between a lovable asshole and fucking asshole. I'm kind of in the middle, like a real asshole. But Don is a lovable guy, and I do like him, but he's got ideas. He thinks he knows a lot about watches because he's got an engineering degree, and he can throw around terminology like paracrow hairspring, double cam locking vertical column wheel clutch system, and he purports to know what this crap means. Well, I got news. First of all, most of us don't know what that means. This is how much horological I am. I am very little horological. Horologicaling is hard, okay? By the way, did you guys hear? There's an interview coming out with Donald Trump, who gave an interview to Reuters in which he said, and I quote literally, "Being president is harder than I thought." Really? No shit. Okay, but don't get me off track. So Don has got this boner against Breitling, and Don is not alone. Actually, in this particular one, Don is in good company. Now, my friend and your friend, all our friends, the mad genius, the young boy genius, the mad crazy man, the madman of horology, Dennis Van Patten, asterisk, not really his real name, maybe, he's kind of got a boner against Breitling too. And we're gonna come back to the why and is that rational. But first, I want to talk about Don and his posting about this sale. So Don posts up about the sale, and what he says in his post is, Breitling sold to CVC, who are now going to focus on the Chinese market. I hope they all die. Which is actually, Don, if you're gonna wish somebody dead, you should probably wish them a slow and painful death. Because if they're just hit by a bolt of lightning, you don't really get, anti-addictive guy, wristwatch check, wearing my in-house Black Bay shitter. But that's another thing. That's not a shitter. That's a decent watch with an in-house movement, Swiss made. It's almost the most fun you can have with a watch for its price range of, $2,000-$3,000. And Richard Stevens, there is such thing as a shitter. And because you say that, I'm completely convinced that you are wearing one, right now, and you're sensitive about it. So I went and I read the article. Breitling has been kind of privately held. There's one dude, I forget his name, Richard something, I think, but he owns the vast majority of Breitling stock. So unlike the Richelieu Group or the Swatch Group that owns almost every other brand, with the exception of Rolex, Rolex is family held in a charitable trust. Rolex actually a non-profit run by the family. But like virtually every other group that, from Blancpain to Jaeger-LeCoultre to Omega, all of these watch brands are owned by mega corporations, most of whom own multiple brands. So Breitling, at something under $1 billion, was recently sold by one private investor to a group, and the group is called CVC. And CVC, a spokesman for them who refuses to give his name because these are private plans, just mentioned that they're going to be focusing, among other things, on the Chinese market. So, the Chinese market it's big, and in prior years, it represented a huge. I've just been fisted. Thanks, buddy. It represented, like a large percentage of Swiss watch sales. So as the Europe and United States maybe began, we had a little bit of economic blips. China was like on the rise, and they started, buying a lot of watches. There's an emerging upper middle and rich wealthy class in China. And not only that, but they do a lot of bribery over there, right? And so they were giving, expensive portable gifts as, sort of like, bribery for, completing contracts and signing up for business and stuff like that. Recently made illegal by the Chinese government, by the way, which fucked watch sales in Switzerland for a while. Only the Swiss, who probably still have vaults of Jewish teeth, with gold in them, only the Swiss would be, upset by anti-corruption laws anywhere. Buddy, you missed the quick. I'm being requested for the quick wristwatch check, and yeah, I've already done it. You're gonna have to review here, and we're gonna come back and talk a little more about that brand. Anyway. So here's the thing. I gotta say, I think it's actually kind of good news that if Breitling was gonna sell, and they've been rumored to be for sale for about a year, and they sold for, I don't know, something in the order of around 800 million Swiss francs / dollars, because the franc and the dollar are kind of close. But anyway, if they were gonna sell, I think it's a lot better that they sold to a private investor, or in this case a group, which keeps them still private. And when I say group, it's a consortium, it's a holding company. So at least it's not been sold to Swatch Group, for example. Why is that a good thing? Because I think it will help maintain the independence of brand identity, and it's a bad thing in the sense that they don't have as much resource at their disposal as a Richelieu Group or a Swatch Group to be, making and modifying all of their own movements. Which brings me to discuss a little bit, why so much hate for Breitling? Breitling is a love it or fuck it brand, and I'm in the middle. I like it. There are some of their watches that I like very much, on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm a member of the Breitling 130 group, which is Breitling 130 owners group. I don't know how it got its name, but it's a fun group. And there's 10,000 people over there. But what I think is, somebody's asking if the company's sale will affect the value of the watches. I wouldn't think so. And in fact, if they start investing in more research, development, marketing, that might actually help the value of the Breitling watch. So I'm not a defender of Breitling to the point where I say it's better than Rolex. You saw these guys on the Breitling Owners Club saying, Breitling is better than Rolex, and my Breitling is better than any Rolex made, including the James Cameron. That's like a recent argument over there. And although I like that group a whole lot, my answer to that whole thread is bullshit. You people do not own. I own. I'm lucky. Okay, I'm a lucky guy, and I have acquired a James Cameron, and then this Breitling and a couple of others. And I can tell you, there's no comparison in the quality. If you just wear almost any Rolex and almost any Breitling, here's what you're going to find. The Rolex is just a better finished, better considered, better engineered watch. It just feels better. It's just like the difference between, if you've ever eaten a steak at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, okay? It's beef, it's a ribeye, or a fillet, whatever you get over there. Eat a steak sometime at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. It's going to cost you $50, $60. But it is going to be amazing. They jacked that cow off right before slitting its throat, and it died happy, let me tell you what. And then go eat a steak over at Lone Star or Outback. have your bloomin' onion and then get a steak over it, like Lone Star. It's still beef, it's still a steak, it's still ribeye, but not only did they not, massage that cow's testicles before it died, but they probably like beat it and cursed its mother, and it died tense. And it was, not only that, it was probably old. It probably died like, one step ahead of the, needle from the veterinarian. So, a steak is not a steak. And a watch is not a watch. So the Breitling, it's not quite, as low as the Steak and Shake, version. But the most of the elements of the Rolex are just more refined, better considered. If you wear them both, you're going to know the Rolex is a better watch. Now, that being said, in general, I'm the kind of guy who also likes to have fun. And I like my watches to speak to me. And that was probably a piece of ribeye, from last night. So the Breitling, although in most cases it's not as well engineered, it's not as refined. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It's not as refined a watch, typically, as the Rolex. In many cases, the Breitling is a more fun watch to wear. It's just a watch that speaks to me, it sings to me. It's more fun. Many of you know I train dogs, so I'm like constantly banging in metal kennels and crates and stuff. And I don't worry about this watch. I don't want to wear a Rolex while I'm working. But I got to remind myself once in a while to take this off and put a Rolex on, because I have them and I want them to get wrist time. So let me say, here are some of them. Give me a second. I got to open the window before I'm like a dog. I'm going to overheat and suffocate in this car. I shouldn't have worn this coat. This will probably change the sound here, but hopefully you can still hear me. Yeah, now I'm hearing like way too much stuff. Hang on. I turned the radio off that came on, and I'm going to close up the windows because now all I hear is traffic. Okay. Most Breitlings are shiny, like all over the place. And I had dinner with the secretive and elusive Dennis Van Patten, and I showed him this watch, and he just got this very sad look on his face. And Dennis, if you're watching this, I love you, and I hate to make you sad, but I'm an individual and I have to express myself. And as much as you love your 31 millimeter, 1947 Gerard Perregaux, I kind of like my, 2007, fuck you in the face, Breitlings. It's the kind of guy I am. I'm not really stealthy, okay? So I over Peking Duck, I showed Dennis this watch, and he made a kind of like a, sad little frowny face. He got a little emo on me for a minute. I thought he might cut himself, but then he recovered. He did. And he looked at it, and he goes, well, I'll never forget his comment. He goes, well, at least it's not shiny. And I knew what he meant, because all my other Breitlings are like covered in high polished surfaces, and this one, the bracelet is it looks a little shiny in the light here, but actually it's a matte finish. What do we call that? It's a brushed finish, although it's brushed a little onto the shiny side. If you're completely dull matte finish and you're kind of slightly, this is a little bit, for Breitling, this is very dull. But in terms of matte finishes, this does reflect the light a little. So it's a light satin finish. And the bezel also has a satin finish, matte finish, rather than high polished. In fact, the only place you're going to find high polished surfaces on this watch are on the flanks, both flanks and the pushers. So this is, and it's a big watch, but it's a little stealthier maybe than your average Breitling. So, but this is a Steelfish chronograph, 44 millimeters. So, and it's a little bit the exception, because the average Breitling has, like, if you go look at my review for the Super Ocean chronograph, that's a 42 millimeter A13340 reference. I have a review of it. If you're not a subscriber, bite me or subscribe, please. Like, what would it cost you? It's actually free. I'm having a Groupon right now. If you subscribe, your wife gets to subscribe free too. And if you get her to subscribe, maybe she'll let you buy watches. So I'm gonna touch the screen here. I'm graying out. Okay. How is the lume on most Breitlings versus Rolex? So most, it depends, it depends on the watch. I have an older GMT, Rolex GMT, that it will glow for 8 hours, but by the middle of that 8 hours, you have to look at it really closely. And I have a GMT who's like this one, it's blasting all night long. So, it really depends on the watch and the age of the watch, but in general, wipe some schmutz off the phone. In general, Breitling, has as good or better lume, than has as good or better lume than Rolex. That chromalite, don't get me started. That blue chromalite, it's kind of like really subtle. Which Rolex, the newer lume on Rolex, it's more subtle than their old green, but it does seem to like last longer. So I trashed it when I first got it because I was like, this fucking thing is like really light. But if I wake up to pee at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I can still read the new chromalite. So it's pretty good. But the Breitling's also good. Good for lume. So the probably the only place that you can really nail Breitling hard, there's two areas that I think that you can kind of really critique Breitling hard, and one of them is on movements, right? So a lot of their watches have modified ETA movements. Now they regulate them, and a lot of them are COSC certified, which means that they are regulated to like -4 +6, I think, kind of like that. My car looks cool. Is it a European car? It's a Porsche Cayenne. Yeah, it's a German car. So movements. So a lot, like for example, this watch, although it's running very accurately, it has a regulated Valjoux 7750 in it. It has the trademark wobbly rotor, so you can kind of feel it a little bit, although it's not as noticeable in this one as it is in my Super Ocean Chrono that also has the Valjoux movement. But that's because this case is heavier, so it's containing that movement a little bit more. You can kind of critique some of their movements. But geez, look at Panerai. Panerai has recently started with in-house movements, but they have a lot of watches that are like ridiculously stupidly expensive that feature ETA movements, and don't even get me on Hublot. Like at least these guys are like half the price of a Hublot right there. So we were just interrupted right there by an incoming phone call. So we're picking it right back up, and I don't know if this is going to wind up going as a part 2, or I don't know what happens when a phone call interrupts my live video. Anyway, where was I? Oh, movements. So yeah, a lot of these watches have ETA movements, but Breitling has just started to develop some in-house movements, and that could be because they probably didn't want to put Miyota movements in there. If they would switch to like Japanese Miyota or Seiko movements, I would be really put off the brand. I could take a Swiss movement. I don't even think I would love a Solita, which is a Swiss clone of an ETA. It's like a clone of a clone. I wouldn't like that. But they have started to develop some of their own movements, and yeah, somebody mentioned IWC. IWC has got now some in-house movements in them, but like a lot of their older watches and some of their current production, I believe, still have ETA movements, and some of those IWCs are nice, but they're expensive. So I look for my unboxing, and I think I did a review of my Breitling World Timer, which has an in-house movement. So Breitling does make some in-house movements. It's a complicated movement. It's a complicated watch because it's got 24 time zones and a 24-hour ring. It's gorgeous, and I love that watch. So I think that the issue with Breitling and movements is a little bit overblown. There are an awful lot of watch companies that charge tons and tons of money for in-house movements, but Breitling has moved towards, or tons of money for ETA movements. Breitling is kind of in that category, although they regulate them. I don't think they do display casebacks. I haven't seen a Breitling with a display caseback. So if I'm wrong about that, notify me. But I think the more important thing is that they do a really cool case. They do, and they're doing some in-house movements. Like, just check out the Breitling Galactic Unitime Sleek T, which is a horrible name for an awfully nice watch. That's my World Timer with the white face. Check the review on my channel of that watch. It's gorgeous, and it has a really complicated in-house movement, which tells you that Breitling is capable of some exciting horology. Okay, the second thing about Breitling is price, and you have to be very, very careful about price. If you buy if you buy a Breitling new at an authorized dealer, you had better get a ginormous discount, for doing it, or you are going to get like reamed. You talk about fisting, and not with a PH, but with an F. You're going to get triple fisted if you buy a Breitling new at an authorized dealer. Now, a lot of people say, well, look, I'm never going to sell it, so it doesn't matter what I pay for it. It matters. Notifications in my way. It matters. Because you don't know when you're going to come home and find your best friend or the painter humping your wife, and, all of a sudden, you got to sell the house and cash out all the Breitlings. And if you paid $6,000-$7,000 for a Breitling, that you're going to get $2,500 to $3,200 for on the used market, well, you're going to be sorry. Now, I bought this watch off of a really nice guy who, maybe at some point will be watching this video, and I don't think he's a dumbass for having bought it at a retailer. He's just following his heart and his dream, and this watch talked to him, and there it was. But I bought it for something like a third of retail value. I think I paid about 33% of like full list. And my friend did not pay full list. He is too smart for that. He got a big discount from the authorized dealer, but he lost a lot of money when he sold this watch because he needed to convert it. Now, if I have to sell this watch, and if I can get $2,400, I'll make a smidgen of money on this watch. And that's how you want to buy Breitling. So I think it's really critical that you take into account the resale history and value, retained value of a given brand. Like if you go to the authorized dealer, right, and you buy a Rolex Submariner at full list price, and you need to sell it the next day, you are going to lose money. You will not keep having your $10,000. You're going to lose money. But the percentage that you are going to lose is smaller, much, much, much smaller on that Rolex than the percentage you're going to lose if you do the same thing with like virtually any Breitling. Okay, so I think it's really critical that you buy Breitling correctly. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with it for life, or you're going to have a fire sale if you ever need to sell it. Now, some of you are saying, yeah, fuck yeah, can I have a witness? I'd like to testify. Others of you are saying, oh, hell no, I would never sell a watch. But one of two things is happening to you people. Either you have never sold a watch, so you're in the beginning phases of this, or you're accumulating, like drawer after drawer full of shitter. So if you mature in this hobby, if you stick around long enough to realize, I've sort of, run the gamut, with this collection, and I need to like start flipping it over, and my tastes have changed, then you're going to be taking it up the butt cheeks if you have bought all this stuff at full retail value. So you when you are buying, buy used, buy carefully, buy well. And I think that's particularly important with Breitling. Okay, I haven't been able to look too much at the comments on this screen, but I have seen a couple that I'm going to respond to. So start shooting your questions at me, and I'll do my best to answer. And remember, I am not a horological expert like my friend Dennis Van Patten. I don't pretend to be an engineer the way my friend Donnie's time. I flip watches as much as I jerk off, which I'm doing right now. Well, Pixar, it didn't happen, buddy. So, okay, but I'm an opinionated guy, and so I got an opinion. So somebody asked, do Navitimers hold their value? And the answer is, of the Breitling line, Navitimers are one of those watches which hold their value better than most any other model in the Breitling line. On the one hand, on the other hand, there's been a lot of Navitimers. Now, a lot of editions and iterations and versions and varieties, of Navitimer. I was just showing off my vocabulary because all those words just meant the same thing. There's lots of different ones. And so sort of like the Speedmaster, the sort of like the meh watch of the 20th century. There's like 100 versions of that watch, and the Navitimer is a little like that. I'm no expert, so I can't tell you which of them are the best ones to have, but in general, the Navitimer holds its value a little better. Somebody else asked if when polishing a Breitling, does it lose a lot of material and therefore lose a lot of its value? Well, I don't think they polish up any worse than any other watch, but because they have so many, not this particular one, but because most Breitlings have so many polished surfaces, they're gonna show hairline and light scratches, pretty quickly. And But I've just recently started playing with the Cape Cod cloth method of kind of like rubbing out light scratches. And I urge you to look at some of my videos. I polished up my GMT, a Rolex GMT, and I polished my James Cameron for scratches. That is not the same as taking your watch to the authorized dealer or an aftermarket, watch guy and having him polish that watch professionally. Because when they do that, they remove a lot more material than you're doing with the Cape Cod cloth. So I urge you to avoid professional polishing of your watch, and urge you to just tolerate your scratches or rub them out with a Cape Cod cloth. And there's lots of YouTubes, including mine, on how to do that. A couple people have complained about the clasps on Breitling. Again, I'm not a giant expert. This one is a friction clasp. It's adequate. I'm holding the camera with one hand, so I can't take this thing off right now. But well, here, let me try. Yeah, okay. So here's the friction clasp. I'm going to open it up and show you the. This part of the clasp is milled, right? I got my fly in the way. That's what. So this part of the clasp is milled. So what I got to say is, although this clasp here is not quite as good as current production Rolex, it beats the living shit out of all the pre-ceramic versions of the Rolex bracelet and clasp, right? So although Rolex, I would say, has a nominally better clasp right now than Breitling does. A lot of the Rolex watches in my collection are kind of older, and therefore they don't have clasps like this, right? So pre-ceramic Rolex is a joke. Mr. Cloudy says, well, the watch heads are nice. The bracelets, depending on the bracelet, I'm not a big fan of hollow center links, but the clasps are for shit, and that stamped, metal, clasping is just terrible. And Breitling has, better in that area. On the one hand, on the other hand, the watch heads they're classic and they're beautiful. Okay, guys, well, I got to wrap it up. I have a German Shepherd coming in shortly that I'm not home, but now I got to get home and be ready for my client who's going to drop off that dog. This is Mark from Mark Vlogs Watches. Thanks for being with me.